Hey skaters, welcome back to the Moxi Skates YouTube channel and this episode of Welcome to the Streets with Ghoulie. That's me. In today's episode, we're going to be going over 50/50s. This grind is a really commonly done grind. You might see them done pretty frequently, so I thought this would be a good one to go over following our Machio tutorial, because this is usually the next grind variation that skaters will go to after they learn the Machio or they get used to grinding with their trucks on a ledge. For this tutorial, I do recommend wider trucks. I'm skating 2.5-inch trucks. You don't have to have wide trucks to do this, but it is a little bit easier if you have wider trucks. So slide blocks are the plastic piece that you usually see that's between the wheelbase on a skate, and the trucks are actually what your wheels are attached to, and it's this metal piece here. If you're looking for slide blocks or trucks, you can find them at moxiskates.com. Boom. If you don't know what a 50/50 is, we will show you what that is now. If you missed the last tutorial, please check that one out because we went over Machio grinds and the dominant foot, and that's really important when it comes to learning the next grind variations because they usually build off of the Machio or the lead foot. With a 50/50, you want to focus mostly on that lead foot that we established in the previous video. For me, my dominant foot is my right foot. So if I am to do a Machio or a one-footed grind on my trucks on a ledge, it would be my right foot that I would have most of my weight placed on, and most of my focus is on that foot. Another thing with 50/50 that you might notice is some skaters skate 50/50s with their dominant foot either in the back or the front. So I skate with my dominant foot in the back, and some skaters skate with the dominant foot in the front. So I will show what I'm talking about. So when I do 50/50s, they look like this. So my dominant foot is in the back. Some people will skate with the dominant foot in the front. At this point in time in roller skating, we don't necessarily have a different name for which foot is in front or back for the 50/50. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to focus too much on which foot is which and which means which. I just recommend trying both and seeing what feels most comfortable for you. This is just what happened organically when I started learning 50/50s, and that's what I kept doing. But you might find that one variation of it or one foot in front of the other is easier for you. And the only way to figure that out is just by giving it a try. So if you feel like yours isn't looking exactly like mine, that's okay. I also want to note the name of 50/50. In every sport, there's been debates about trick names. In inlining and skateboarding, there's always been arguments and debating on what names to use for tricks. And roller skating is no exception to this. So people tend to say 50/50 just based on the fact that it represents grinding on the trucks in a row like you would on a skateboard. One of my friends, Caitlin, started calling it a Benji because it's like 100 and 100. And then in inlining, it's called an X grind. I just say 50/50 because that's the most commonly used term for this trick. I don't think that it's that important to get hung up on trick names for now, especially for the sake of tutorials, but if you've heard it be called a Benji or an X grind, or if you're an inliner and you're watching this and you're confused about why we call it 50/50s, it's just what's been commonly used, and I find it's easier to just call what most people find it as recognizable for the time being. Jumping into the tutorial, we're going to start out by standing up onto the obstacle in the foot position that we need, much like the other ones that we've already gone over. You want to just stand up there with the proper foot placement. Again, don't focus too much on which foot is it front and back. Try out both, see what feels comfortable. But you just want to stand up on there and just find your balance. This one is really easy to actually lock in and be able to stand up here pretty comfortably because your skates will most likely lock into the edge. So you just want to find your balance. Usually it's good to bend your knees a little bit for stability and lower your center of gravity. And then just look at the end to see, like, carry your momentum in the direction that you're going, because it's always good to look where you're going. When I first learned this trick, I stepped up into the foot positioning over and over and over again. Even when I was able to jump into it and actually slide, I still did this every time I was at a new session for the day or a new obstacle, if I've never skated that ledge before, I would still do the same thing just to get a feel for the ledge and make sure that I still had that muscle memory of how to do the trick, because that will really lock this in. Once you're comfortable with that, we're gonna start actually jumping into the position. And like the other tutorials, you wanna do the same thing where you bend from the knees, flick from the toes to get power from your legs to jump up onto the obstacle. And once you jump up on the obstacle, you wanna have a little knee bend for stability and lowering your center of gravity. And when you jump off, you still want to absorb the landing by bending your knees to avoid injury and just having a nice absorption in your landing. Once you feel more comfortable with that, you wanna start actually rolling into it to have some momentum. And unlike the front side and back sides, you wanna actually be pretty parallel with the ledge when you're rolling up, because it's easier to jump on with the proper foot placement if you're more parallel than coming at it from an angle. Depending on the obstacle, especially if you're in like a real street scenario, you might not be able to roll at it that way. So you might just have to practice jumping on a different way if you have to. But for the sake of practicing in a more convenient space and you have plenty of room and you have a nice ledge with angle iron on it to practice, parallel is usually the easiest way to roll up to this, to jump on and get the proper foot placement. The biggest mistake I see with 50-50s, or what I see that goes wrong most commonly, is overshooting. So one foot tends to be up on the actual ledge or the box instead of on the edge of it. So instead of being on the edge, it'll actually be on top. So it's like you overshoot, and it could be the front foot or the back foot. That was a problem that I had for a very, very long time. And if you also are experiencing this issue, what I started to do to try to correct it is I would pretend that the edge of the ledge is all that existed and the rest of the ledge did not exist at all. Because overshooting is usually just a mental thing that comes with either fear of not wanting to commit to it, or you feel like you're not gonna lock on in the right placement. The other thing I would do to try to correct this is focus on the foot that's overshooting, because it most likely is gonna be the same foot and one foot that's overshooting and not going into the proper placement. So if that's the case, just focus on that one foot and try very hard to focus on getting that one foot that's overshooting into the right placement. Another thing that could go wrong that you might be experiencing is possibly your weight is too forward and you're hitting your toe stops. If this is happening, all that means is that your weight placement is off a little bit and you're leaning too far forward. So your weight is going up onto your toes and actually hitting your toe stops, which is gonna stop your momentum. If that's happening to you, you just need to sit down a little bit more and back. So not necessarily leaning back, but just sitting almost like you're gonna sit in a chair. So not sit forward, but just sit down. And that will help your weight from just being centered and not forward and tipping your feet forward. Another issue that you might be experiencing is if you feel like you're not getting a good grind out of this trick and you're just going a small distance or you feel a lot of resistance, there's a couple of things that could be happening. Either A, you need to apply more wax to the surface, but if you put your skate on the edge and you kind of slide it back and forth, if it feels like it's sliding really easily, then wax might not be your issue, and you don't want to overwax something, especially if other people are skating the obstacle, because that could be dangerous for them. Try that first, and if it feels like it's sticky or there's a lot of resistance, you might need to add some skate wax. If you're looking for wax, we'll drop a link in the description below where you can get some. That's the company I run, and we sell wax that's great for exactly this purpose. The second thing that could be an issue is just simply your speed. The more speed you apply, or the more momentum that you bring to this trick, the farther you're going to grind or slide. So if you're going a small distance, but you're also not going very fast, or you're going fairly slow and cautious, you're not gonna go very far. And that's totally fine, especially when you're learning and just building the foundation of this trick and getting comfortable. But if you feel like you are comfortable with the foot placement and jumping on and you're nailing the right placement and everything feels good, then try adding a bit more speed and see if that helps with the grind, because most time that's going to be the issue of why you're not getting a longer distance of a grind out of it. Fifty-50s are a really fun trick to learn because there are several different ways that you can get into the trick or out of the trick. So there's a lot of variations you can play with. You can even do them fakie, or you can 180 into them to be fakie, or you can 180 and be forward into them. You can 360 out of them, 180 out of them. There's so many different possibilities to play around with these. So they're one of my favorite tricks to learn. They're a pretty safe and stable trick to kind of try different variations once you get a good feel for how they are and you build up the muscle memory with them. That will conclude 50/50s for today. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope it was helpful to you. If you have other tips that you want to share with others, please put them in the comments below, because it's always helpful to see how others learn or other tips that people have picked up on that I didn't go over. If you want to stay tuned with this series, please subscribe to be notified when the next episode comes out. As always, your support, subscriptions, likes, and comments mean a lot to us here at Moxi and helps us skaters. I'll see you in the next episode. I don't know, is that good?